Okay, let's dive in. Imagine for just a second that everything you see, everything you feel, the floor under you, the sunlight, even your own thoughts. What if it isn't fundamentally real?
Hmm.
What if it's all just, a highly sophisticated, controlled illusion? It's a seriously mind-bending idea.
It really is. And that's the core concept we're exploring today, pulled from the source material we've got.
Yeah, what are we looking at exactly?
We're digging into excerpts from a text called Cracks in the Veil, Escaping the Demiurge's Machine. And this source, well, it doesn't just flirt with the idea that reality might be fake. No, it actually lays out this radical model. It presents our entire existence as having this kind of sim-esque vibe, like a massive, complex machine.
A machine. Built by who, according to this text?
It points to an entity it calls an evil-doing rebel, or sometimes the architect of lies, or the Demiurge.
Right, the Demiurge. So our goal for this deep dive is to unpack what this text, Cracks in the Veil, is actually claiming.
Exactly. We want to understand how this supposed machine works, its control mechanisms.
And critically, what the source calls glitches. Anomalies, right. Things that might let you peek behind the curtain, see a reality beyond this alleged simulation.
Yeah, and it's a framework that pretty much challenges everything we assume about the world, even our own consciousness.
Definitely. The source wants us to look at everyday things like minerals, physical laws, even music, through this totally new kind of wild lens, looking for those cracks.
It's quite the premise.
Okay, so get ready. We're heading into the Demiurge's machine, at least according to this source.
So the central idea in Cracks in the Veil is, frankly, audacious. It says our universe, not the result of some primordial natural creation.
Not natural. Then what?
Instead, the text claims it was rendered, fabricated,
Okay.
by this Demiurge figure. And the purpose stated in the source is pretty clear. Control. To obscure some deeper truth.
So the physical world, what the source calls the material plane, that's just the output, like the graphics card for the cosmos.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, like the output of this huge, complex machine. And the source gets specific about the core components designed to keep the illusion going.
Okay, like what?
Well, take our five senses. The text doesn't see them just as biological tools. It calls them pre-programmed input filters.
Pre-programmed filters. How so?
They're calibrated, supposedly, to specifically screen out anything from external, true realities. They only let in what the simulation wants us to perceive.
Wow, like built-in reality censorship. Okay. And what about the physical laws we count on? Gravity, electromagnetism, all that stuff.
The source labels those the fundamental programming rules of the simulation.
So not inherent laws of the universe, but rules written into the code.
That's the idea. They create that sense of order, predictability, which the text suggests is actually designed to mask the artificiality of it all. Makes it harder to question.
Makes sense. And then there's time. The source mentions time as a linear narrative.
Right. Another core construct.
Yeah.
This forward-moving sequence keeps our awareness locked within the simulation's plotline, basically.
Preventing us from seeing.
What, deeper cosmic rhythms, maybe? Things outside this linear flow? Or even memories, potentially, of any state before we enter this simulation. It keeps us on track, their track.
It's a darkly fascinating picture. Okay, so beyond the physics and senses, the source talks about ways to keep us, the inhabitants, unaware and just.
Yeah.
Busy inside the illusion.
Yeah, one of the big ones is called the Veil of Forgetfulness.
The Veil of Forgetfulness.
It's described as an amnesia protocol, something supposedly implemented at birth or, whenever consciousness enters this simulated reality.
Amnesia, like we forget something important.
Exactly. The source suggests it's designed to block access to any memories of a true, perhaps higher existence we might have had before this. We start with a clean slate, but it's a programmed clean slate.
And while we're in the state of forgetting, how does the simulation keep us occupied? The source mentions desire-distraction loops.
Think about the constant drive for material things, for social status, endless entertainment, even our basic primal instincts. The source argues these aren't just natural human tendencies, they're engineered pursuits, crafted by the Demiurge to keep our attention firmly fixed inside the simulation, so we don't look deeper.
Wow. It even floats the idea of emotional siphons? What's that about? Sounds ominous.
It is. It suggests there might be mechanisms built in to actually extract certain energies from us.
Extract energy? Like what kind?
Maybe energy from strong emotions like fear or even worship, or just the mundane energy of our daily effort.
And what for?
The text speculates this energy could be used to power the simulation itself, or maybe even to empower the Demiurge, siphoning off energy that maybe belongs elsewhere.
That's Yeah, that's a chilling thought. That our feelings could be fuel. What about other people? The source has a term for some of them, right? Non-player characters.
Yes, NPCs. Or programmed agents. The text claims these entities look, act, talk just like conscious beings, but lack genuine, independent awareness.
So they're like background characters in this cosmic play. What's their job?
Their function is apparently crucial. They help reinforce the main narrative, uphold the rules, keep the distractions going, maybe even funnel that energy we talked about, and act as gatekeepers.
Gatekeepers.
Yeah, guiding interactions, keeping those with genuine consciousness from straying too far, from asking too many questions,
Yeah.
keeping the illusion intact.
Man, it really makes you rethink everyday interactions, doesn't it? This whole model just flips everything we assume about the world and the people in it.
It absolutely does. But importantly, the text doesn't just paint this bleak picture of a perfect prison. It also talks about cracks, potential ways out, or at least ways to see through it.
Okay, like what?
It suggests certain natural phenomena aren't just natural, they're anomalies, glitches in the matrix, basically,
Yeah.
hinting at something beyond the simulation.
And the main example the source uses is labradorite. That stone with the amazing flashes of color.
That's the one. Now, the source acknowledges the science, labradorescence,
Yeah.
how light hits those tiny internal layers and creates interference, diffraction. That's real physics.
But it gives it another meaning.
Yes. Through the lens of this simulation theory, that optical effect is interpreted as a flaw, a glitch. It's like the Demiurge's rendering engine can't perfectly handle how true light, maybe light from outside the simulation, interacts with that specific mineral structure.
So those beautiful flashes of blue, green, gold, they aren't just light reflecting.
Not according to Cracks in the Veil. It describes them as momentary bursts of raw, unfiltered data packets, like unprocessed energy wavelengths from the real light spectrum, briefly punching through the simulation's visual overlay.
Whoa! So labradorite becomes like a persistent little crack in the illusion, a spot where the control isn't total.
Precisely. And the source suggests its function is more than just looking cool. It can act as a catalyst for sensory recalibration.
Recalibration.
Yeah, the idea is that by focusing on these visible glitches, you can kind of train your perception to catch glimpses of the underlying energy, the real information that the simulation usually filters out.
So it's like tangible proof. A physical object suggesting there's more than the fabricated world. That's a lot to pack into a mineral.
It is. And for certain individuals, the ones the source calls the attuned, like a geomancer or a seeker labradorite, becomes even more significant.
How so?
The text claims that with focus, with intent, they can learn to read those flashes, that refraction glitch, as a direct feed of information. Information from genuine reality.
The source calls it a perceptual lens, right? Or a tuning fork.
Exactly. Something that helps consciousness bypass the simulation's built-in sensory input filters.
Allowing them to see what exactly?
Glimpses of the true energetic reality beneath the simulation. It helps them tell the difference between the program stuff and the real underlying forces.
Okay, and this is where the source brings in concepts like key currents or dragon lines, and it makes a point to distinguish them from ley lines.
Yes, that distinction is important in the text. It suggests that what we often call lie lines, maybe linked to ancient sites like Stonehenge, might actually be social constructs.
Yeah.
Or even programmed narratives within the simulation.
Designed to give a false sense of ancient connection.
Perhaps, but these key currents, or dragon lines, are presented as different, as true, pre-existing energetic pathways, veins of the unsimulated cosmos that the simulation has to work around, but didn't create itself.
And the source gives examples of where you might find these true key manifestations. Some are surprising.
Very. It mentions things you might expect, like underground water, atmospheric flows, certain geological formations. But then, critically, it includes urban currents.
Urban currents? Like what?
Things like the electromagnetic frequencies from Wi-Fi, 4G, 5G networks, power grids.
Wait, hold on. Wi-Fi signals. How is my Wi-Fi router connected to cosmic energy?
Well, it's fascinating. The source suggests that even though these things are rendered by the simulation for its own functional purposes, their underlying energy is still detectable. An attuned person, using labradorite maybe, could perceive them not just as invisible waves, but as distinct shifting color patterns or ethereal glows.
Revealing the genuine energy pathways the simulation tries to hide in plain sight.
That's the claim, revealing the actual data flows beneath the surface rendering. So yeah, the Wi-Fi in your house in this model could be a visible sign of true energy if you could bypass the filters. It's quite a reframing.
Incredible. And Labradorite also helps detect other things, inconsistencies or interference.
According to the source, yes. Places where the simulation might be unstable, struggling to maintain its coherence, or where maybe influences from outside realities are bleeding through. These create localized ripples or data corruption.
And the Labradorite acts like a detector.
It amplifies them, supposedly. The source says it might cause the geomancer to see a strong, perhaps unsettling color shift or intensity, like a visual alarm bell, highlighting areas where the veil is thin or the simulation is glitching.
So watching the stone helps you spot glitches in the world.
Kind of trains the eye, yeah. And moving on from external things like stones and energy fields, cracks in the veil also looks inward. It talks about inherent glitches within the human condition itself, aspects that apparently defy the Demiurge's programming.
Okay, like the echo glitch, what's that one about?
That's tied to memory and intuition. The source views it as a flaw in that amnesia protocol we talked about.
The veil of forgetfulness.
Right. Despite the attempt to wipe our memories of any higher reality, the text argues that echoes of the true self, or fragments of those higher memories, can still leak through into our conscious or subconscious minds.
And how would we experience these echoes?
The source points to things like strong gut feelings, that weird sense of deja vu, really profound dreams that feel more real than waking life, or just knowing something deeply without any logical reason.
So not just random brain stuff.
Not in this framework. Yeah. They're seen as genuine reconnections to our true origin, moments where the programmed amnesia fails, little whispers from beyond the veil.
And does Labradorite connect back to this too?
The source suggests it might. That training your perception with the visual glitches of the stone could make your mind more sensitive, more receptive to picking up on these subtle memory leaks from your true self.
Interesting connection. Okay, what's the other internal glitch? The purpose glitch.
Yeah, this refers to what the source calls humanity's unprogrammable yearning. That deep-seated drive for gnosis, for meaning, for truth, for spiritual connection.
Despite all the distractions the simulation throws at us?
Exactly. The source claims that while the Demiurge engineered all those mundane distractions, chasing money, status, entertainment, this fundamental desire for more, for something real, is part of our true self, and couldn't be fully programmed out.
So it's like an internal compass pointing beyond the simulation.
That's a good way to think of it, yeah. Guiding us to seek answers outside the approved narrative. And again, like the echo glitch, the text suggests this yearning gets amplified when we encounter other glitches, like maybe working with Labradorite.
And the source sees this whole search for meaning, even when it's hard or goes against the grain, as an act of resistance.
A profound act of resistance, yeah. Against the Demiurge's control system.
Wow. Okay, the source doesn't stop there, does it? It also looks at sound.
Right. Cracks in the Veil explore sound as another potential battlefield, another place where the struggle between true reality and the simulation plays out. It specifically contrasts two types, tribal music and solfeggio frequencies.
That's an interesting comparison. How does it view tribal music?
Tribal music gets presented as organic, unprogrammed resistance, something bubbling up from true human essence.
Rooted in community and tradition.
Exactly. Rooted in communal experience. Ancient traditions, that intuitive connection to the natural world, which, the source implies, still contains traces of true Shi energy, even if it's rendered.
And what's its alleged power in this context? Why is it resistance?
Its power, according to the text, comes from its raw, organic nature, the rhythms, the percussion, vocals that aren't confined by Western scales. This apparently helps it bypass our usual conscious filters. And crucially, the source claims it resonates directly with that unsimulated energy substrate, the true Ki flow, creating harmonic distortions in the simulation's own energy field.
Like jamming the signal with primal sound?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
It also frames a potential cultural memory leak, maybe carrying encoded ancestral knowledge, spiritual lineage, a link back to pre-simulation times.
And the sound itself can shift consciousness.
It suggests the immersive quality can induce altered states, helping someone temporarily detune from the simulation, maybe access raw data.
The community aspect seems important too.
Definitely. The source implies that fostering unity, the shared consciousness often found in communal music, directly counters the Demiurge's strategy of keeping individuals isolated within the simulation.
Okay, so that's tribal music as this sort of organic, bottom-up resistance. How does the source handle solfeggio frequencies? They're quite different, often very precise, even digitally made tones.
Very different. And interestingly, the source presents two quite distinct possible interpretations for solfeggio frequencies.
Two possibilities. What's the first one?
One interpretation is that they could be the Demiurge's managed escape valve.
A managed escape. Like a safety feature for the simulation.
Kind of. In this view, they offer a safe, controlled spiritual experience within the simulation's boundaries. It gives people that feeling of healing or connection they crave, but in a predictable way that doesn't actually threaten the overall structure.
So it satisfies the urge without truly freeing you.
Potentially, yeah. It manages the spiritual yearning just enough to stop people looking for a full, unpredictable awakening. So, ironically, it could end up reinforcing the illusion.
Okay. That's one view. What's the other interpretation?
The second interpretation is much more empowering for the individual. It suggests solfeggio frequencies might actually be hard-coded bypasses, exploits left in the simulation's code.
Exploits. Like cheat codes.
Exactly. Like fundamental vibrational truths, maybe from the true reality, that the Demiurge couldn't completely erase or overwrite when building the simulation.
So listening to them could do what?
In this view, it's like entering specific debug commands. It could trigger a direct internal recalibration in the listener, maybe desynchronizing them slightly from the Matrix's default programming. A direct hack.
Wow. So, two completely different takes. Tribal music as organic, communal resonance versus solfeggio, which might be either a contrast release or a direct coded exploit. That really makes you think differently about the sounds you hear, doesn't it?
It certainly does. And the fact that the source proposes all these potential glitches, whether it's in stone like Labrador, or in energy currents even in our cities, or deep within our own intuition and yearning, or encoded in sound, carries some pretty big implications.
Yeah, the main one being that the Demiurge's control, however vast it seems, isn't perfect. The simulation isn't totally sealed. There are cracks.
Right. And the key takeaway from the source seems to be that because of these cracks, avenues for real understanding, for connecting back to the unsimulated cosmos, actually exist. They're accessible.
And the path to that understanding, to gnosis as the source calls it, isn't about just believing something blindly within the simulation's rules.
No, it's presented as being about heightened perception, about critical inquiry, about actively looking for these anomalies, these inconsistencies.
It sounds like it requires a willingness to actually question the surface reality, to listen for rhythms that don't fit the program, and maybe trust those gut feelings, those echoes the source talks about.
Exactly. Trusting the echoes of one's true self that managed to leak through the veil.
And the source kind of concludes by framing that whole process, humanity's ability to even look beyond the veil, to spot the glitches, and try to reconnect as the ultimate act of defiance against this architect of lies.
It's a powerful call to fundamentally reevaluate how we perceive everything, definitely within the context of this source material.
It really is. So we've taken quite a journey here, a real deep dive into the fascinating and, let's be honest, pretty radical ideas from Cracks in the Veil, escaping the Demiurge's machine. We've explored its whole model of a simulated reality potentially run by this Demiurge figure. We looked at the alleged glitches hidden in minerals like labradorite.
And energy flows even in urban settings.
Right, leaking through our own minds as intuition or purpose.
And maybe even encoded in music and sound.
Yeah, and just to be super clear, this entire deep dive, everything we discussed, was based only on the concepts and framework presented in that specific source, Cracks in the Veil.
Absolutely, we're exploring the ideas in the text.
Right, but taking those ideas as a thought experiment. If the source has a point, if even tiny things like a flash of color in a stone or a specific sound frequency could be hints of something more, something outside the simulation, well, it makes you wonder, how might you start looking for your own potential cracks in the everyday world around you?
Something to definitely ponder.